Hello, hello. We are live. I see people still joining in here.
Hello, I'll check mine. You can hear me, right?
Yep, you're all good.
Wonderful.
Brian, can we hear you?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yep, perfect. We'll give a few more minutes for people to join in here. Myrna, are you there? Can you hear? You all good? I think you're muted. Okay, cool. Okay, I'll give it one more minute and then we can get started here. I see we have a few more people that are registered, not joining, but for those that are here, thanks for joining. I have a few guests here. We'll get some intros started, but looks like we're all kind of rolling in here. So I'll give it one more minute and then we can launch this off and see how it goes. Okie dokie. I think we'll just go ahead and get started. So, to those that are here, hello, welcome. Thanks for joining our discussion today. I have two guys that I know pretty well in the programmatic space that I've dealt with and worked with and have respect for. So, I thought it'd be great to invite them in and just have a roundtable and talk about the evolving world of programmatic. And it's pretty deep. I don't think it's enough to all cover in one 45-minute roundtable, but I think this will be a great discussion. My name's Taylor. To introduce myself, my name's Taylor Dean. I'm the head of client success, customer success at Growth Channel. I have been here for since October, so about 4, 5, 6 months now, coming around that corner. And I've been in the programmatic space for 5, 6 years now. So I got my start at a small agency here in Salt Lake City, Utah. I kind of got dumped to the wolves my first few weeks with no experience and kind of had to teach myself that first month and start digging through data with no experience and start making optimizations. And I kind of got a really rough head start to programmatic, but it kind of grew my love for programmatic and problem solving and kind of evolving yourself in the ever evolving world of programmatic and new trends and things that are going on. So that's where I come from. I'm so excited to be here at Growth Channel, kind of leading the surge on everybody having access to programmatic and getting into the space and having access to data at their fingertips in an easier way. So super excited. I'm joined by my two guests here, Steve Bernstein. I call him Bernie, so I'm going to refer to him as Bernie.
Please.
And then Brian. And they both have a deep expertise kind of from an opposite end of myself in the programmatic ecosystem. So I've been mainly involved in the buying side and the demand side. And these two have spent a lot of time on the supply side. So we work hand in hand. We make each other happy. And we have some experience with each other. So it's awesome. I'll let Bernie take it away first. He's calling in from Magnite. He represents that sell side, and he helps people like me navigate that supply path, transparency, and some of those questions. So I'll let him give a quick intro.
Thank you, Taylor. I appreciate it and great to be here with everybody. So yes, everybody calls me Bernie, creatively from my last name. A little bit of my background is I actually started on the agency side in New York, back at Ogilvy and Mather, when Ogilvy was actually Ogilvy. Then went on into the broadcast television sales side, where I was a salesperson, a sales manager, was ostensibly running a station for a little while. I then went over into syndication as a distributor. And I was selling television programs like Seinfeld, King of Queens, also sold some really weird ones like Judge Hatchet, season 9, best of. But that gave me a ticket to the country to see how people are doing things in different markets and really the differences between a New York and LA and a Beaumont, Texas, for example. It was then that I went over to measurement. I was with ComScore for 7+ years, before I ended up at Magnite on the supply side. So I like to think of it as this 360-degree view of the industry, really probably 355 degrees, but it has given me a lot of knowledge along the way and a lot of different perspectives.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro. I'll throw it over to Brian now. He's calling in from Freewheel, and he's bringing another seller side perspective. And I've worked with him as well at other companies and things like that. So I'll let Brian take it away.
Yeah. Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm Brian Wanless. I got my start in programmatic at SpotX. I was an account manager there for a little over 2 years, executing managed service programmatic campaigns, really in the weeds, performing or executing campaigns, like I said, optimizing deals, providing reporting to clients, that kind of thing. And then SpotX was acquired by Magnite. So Bernie and I know each other really well. We actually work together on the Magnite sales team. I transitioned from my account manager position at SpotX Magnite over to a independent agency sales position. Worked there for a couple of years. And now I've taken on a new role over at Freewheel, supporting independent agencies and their programmatic buying teams with curation of premium CTV, OTT inventory, and kind of helping them navigate the complex landscape of programmatic advertising.
Awesome. Thanks for your intros, guys. I'm excited to dive in. We have a few questions to cover. We got a lot to cover. Kind of focus around CTV, programmatic TV, measurement, and some things like that. I want to keep it kind of a roundtable style. So I would love both of you guys' input on all questions. I'll kind of direct it towards one to start, but love to keep it as a conversation with just a few listeners listening in. But everyone that's listening or watching this recording, if you're listening live, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We have a little questions section down there. And if we see it live, we can get to it, or at the end of the call, if we have any time. Would love to get to those questions and answer some questions there. For those of the recordings, feel free to reach out to any of us for any questions you may have, and we can address it as such. So just to dive right in, let's kick it off. Brian, I'll direct this first one just kind of towards you and start the conversation. Could you give us a quick intro on what you're seeing as the biggest shift in programmatic today?
The biggest shifts in programmatic that we're seeing, I think everyone's aware of the incredible growth that we're seeing in impression delivery across all kinds of programmatic avenues. Ad viewership growth in the United States, Europe, both up in double-digit percentages year over year. So we're continuing to see the incredible growth as more and more linear and traditional viewership moves into the programmatic landscape. And a lot of what's driving that is it's just a far more monetizable kind of avenue for publishers making their content available across all these different streaming platforms. There's a lot more addressability, targetability, and revenue to be made for these publishers making their content available in streaming environments.
Nice. I know we have a few questions about like what content's viewable and what's reported and things like that. So we'll get to that. Bernie, Steve, do you have any other insight? What are you seeing as the biggest shift in programmatic on your side?
Yeah, I mean, everything that he said is definitely spot on. I think it just democratizes the space in general. Like we're seeing from a content perspective, more content than we've seen before. And part of that is because it's about the addressability or the targetability. And I have a lot of these conversations in the traditional world that people are used to logos. They're used to very specific things. And now we can shift towards audiences and not content. And I am seeing a lot more of that and a lot more heads nodding when we're having those conversations.
Yeah, I agree. Even on our side, we're not really worrying about, the audiences are such a huge part of, we want to serve the right people in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
It's definitely shifting that way. I'll dive into our first kind of question, kind of about reportability / measurability. I've been noticing an increase on our side for CTV specifically and across programmatic as a whole. People have been saying, this is the only thing you really buy that you don't know what you're buying 70, sometimes 80, 90% of the time, especially CTV. A lot of our advertisers say they might spend more they could do more with CTV if the reportability was better, or if they could have more insight into the program level and maybe even episode, or some more of that deep granular details about CTV specifically. On your guys' side, what's working? What's still a black hole of that? Are there some that report more than others? What's that landscape kind of look like? I'll direct that towards you, Bernie.
Yeah, and I'll start. And I think this is a good back and forth place, Brian. That if you have things to add, by all means, please.
Yeah.
2023 was the first year that we saw streaming overtake traditional television. We haven't seen the budgets necessarily follow suit, and we wonder why that is. I think in a fair amount of part, that's because of what you're talking about. The understanding, whether you want to call it transparency, granularity, what we're used to, any of those would definitely apply. So it's things that the industry is working on. Sometimes I almost think about it as the old days of cable. If anybody out there has ever purchased cable, you didn't always know exactly what you were getting. You may have known a network, but that granularity wouldn't always be there. And I personally have been a big advocate for pushing towards this. Like, we not only are a technology-based industry, but we are able to help our clients and move this along at what I believe should be a more frenetic pace than it currently is. That being said, there truly are things that stand in the way. This is being built out as it's happening. So these things weren't just necessarily put in place, and this is how they built it. So it's an ongoing evolution. That's one of them. Yeah. Part of it is publishers and what they are actually giving. I can tell you, as an SSP, we're the ones that are closest to the inventory, have the one-to-one relationship. We are based off of helping these publishers monetize their inventory. So nobody really knows this better than us. That it becomes a function of what metadata is available out there. And I think there's different reasons why there isn't. I read the trades as much as anybody else. Some of it might be inventory that publishers are worrying about cherry picking. We talk about addressability, something at ComScore we said was under addressability. You're left with all these units that actually aren't taken. So those are concerns that are taking place. But I have been asked that question. Sometimes people are thinking like, oh, you're just obfuscating it yourself. And that truly is not the case. It really starts from the publisher level. I'll pause there, Brian. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, just kind of piggybacking off of what Bernie's saying. He's spot on. 2020, we really saw the explosive growth of connected TV and the programmatic streaming ecosystem kind of like skyrocket. So there's been kind of this mad dash from a technological perspective to make all of these more granular data points available through the programmatic bid stream. Not all of the tech has been built out in that 4-year, I guess 5-year time span. So a lot of that reporting, I guess all of that reporting transparency that is available in the bid stream is based on what the publishers are capable and willing to provide. Bernie over at Magnite, obviously extremely close to the inventory. Over here at Freewheel, we're the publisher ad server for the overwhelming majority of CTV inventory in the space. So when you're talking to a Magnite, when you're talking to a Freewheel, we really are the closest you can get to the inventory and the publisher relationships. Yeah. So we're working all the time to try and make these content metadata signals like network level delivery, show level, program level delivery available to our buyers and advertisers. But there's just kind of this lag time, right? Where all these publishers and ad servers and SSPs are trying to make this technology work as well as possible. And yeah, I guess that's kind of what the holdup is for getting that level of transparency in your delivery. And then on the flip side, when you're looking to buy specific shows and networks, it's going to come down to sourcing that inventory effectively, with partners that are able to provide that that level of reporting and access to the inventory
at a cost that makes sense too.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, that's a big part of it as well. Thanks for you guys. Sorry, I cut myself off. Thanks for your insight there. Our next kind of topic, shifting gears a little bit from like reportability and things like that. I wanted to talk about live TV, live sports, any kind of live programmatic. Feel like there's some holdback in live TV. Not all of it's available sometimes programmatically. You have to go get a deal here. You have to go get a deal here. You have to bid these amazing amounts. I'll direct this towards you, Brian. Excuse me. On your side, what do you feel is holding back live CTV, specifically live TV, or is there no holdup?
I mean, I think there's definitely a holdup, and we kind of jokingly say on this side of the industry that it's kind of the last domino to fall for traditional linear broadcast TV.
Yep.
There's still a ton of money in upfronts being pushed to these publishers and networks and broadcasters in the traditional linear capacity. So there's still massive budgets that advertisers are willing to fork out to deliver in that traditional that linear environment. But we're seeing more and more of that inventory move over to streaming environments. That being said, still in streaming programmatic CTV, the overwhelming majority of that inventory is still bought through upfronts. You think tier one auto advertisers, the big pharmaceutical, insurance companies, these guys with unbelievable amounts of budget are buying up a lot of that inventory on guaranteed buys that kind of restrict that inventory from being made available programmatically. The shift that's beginning to happen is publishers are beginning to realize, hey, if we make more of this inventory available programmatically, we can reach more users, and we can more effectively monetize those impressions. We can charge a higher amount programmatically than we can for say I'm an NBC and Chevy wants to buy $50 million of live TV advertising. They're going to get a really, really screaming rate on that buy. Whereas if they make that inventory available programmatically to advertisers across the board, they're going to be able to charge a lot more for that in a programmatic auction.
Yep.
So as the tech is being built out, as it's becoming more available, we're going to start to see more and more of that inventory available to standard programmatic auctions rather than those big upfront deals.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I think of it as like a tier 1 and a tier 2/3. What Brian said is the fact that a lot of this stuff is happening on a national or a linear basis. For example, the inventory that's being taken up right now has that larger footprint. So now all of a sudden, if we start going into each individual DMA and we start breaking up those pieces, it's harder for publishers to actually get them back together and be able to monetize it. So I think we're talking about some live sports. If we're talking on some smaller nets and things like that, that's a totally different story than what we're seeing about NFL, for example, which is, like he said, being sold in an upfront or on a large deal basis. It does go back to the technology. I can speak for ourselves where we're really advancing. Magnite recently renewed their partnership with Direct and having live sports be the forefront of that deal to be able to deliver for them, because that's extremely important to them. So it's working with the MVPDs. Addressable is probably an easier thing to take care of when it's on the set-top box versus streaming and all the things that take place there. But it is an evolution. And I do think we're at that point where the things that are going to happen are going to happen at a much faster pace now.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thanks for the insight. I'm going to shift gears a little bit here now away from live sports. Thanks for you guys' comments and insights on that. I know that, live sports is becoming more of a focus. Live TV in general is more of a focus. But wanted to talk a little bit about some of those like smart TVs pushing some display ads / native ad formats, or even the growth of CTV ads to having QR codes or products cycling through in more of like a dynamic creative sort of thing. Wanted to look into this with you guys and just see, are these types of new ads, are they actually engaging, or are they just new types of banner ads? Is it just a more expensive banner ad per se? On your ends, I'll start with you, Bernie. I don't know if you've had a lot of experience with this. Yeah, I know it's kind of new and emerging, but what have you seen on your end with that?
It is. It's definitely nascent with us right now. And this is an area where I'm definitely going to give a personal opinion and opine here for a second. When I'm having my conversation along with my clients, something I'm like, what do you think? Because I think it's pretty cool. This is a place that I think is really cool. And Magnite is definitely on the forefront of working with the OEMs with this in particular, because we have data from the manufacturers themselves that shows how effective it is. Now, I don't have that right in front of me, and I wouldn't want to speak for them in particular. So there is data out there that talks about the efficacy of having these ads. From a personal opinion, like I said, I call my wife over. I'm like, check this out. They're finally doing it. We've been talking about this for a while. Now, how do we get that into the programmatic ecospace? That's not as easy, because these manufacturers have been selling it direct for quite a while. And having some friends in the industry, I originally would call them up and I'd be like, hey, are you guys just throwing this in? Or is this something that clients are actually asking for, or brands into this? And the first thing right away was like, absolutely. These are things that they are asking for. This is being monetized. This is something that has extreme value to brands and clients. So that was 6 months ago or 8 months ago that I was hearing about it. We're on the verge of being able to have access to this programmatically, which I think is the even cooler spot, because back to now we can find that right person at the right time with the right message, where before it was probably done on just more of that top of the funnel. We're going to do this on one footprint. So I hope that answers the question, adding in a little bit of my personal experience.
Yeah, talking about like pause ads, banner ads. There are a lot of different ways to apply those types of advertising in CTV and OTT environments. You can get highly interactive ads that come in just through the regular programmatic CTV viewing experience. We've probably all seen them, right? Like you're watching Hulu and an ad comes up and it's got a cool QR code, a banner on the side. You can flip through it with your TV remote.
Yep.
Definitely an exciting way to kind of get some interaction from your target audience. And as soon as those clicks start to come through, if you have a good attribution model, you can really start to measure what your audience is doing and how they're interacting with the ad.
How is that measured? So is it a similar idea of like a pixel on those things, or how is that being measured?
Yeah. So typical CTV and video attribution. I'm not even going to get into display and native with this little tidbit here, because that's a whole nother conversation. But typically with CTV attribution, you're going to apply a pixel to the creative you're running. And then that pixel, depending on when the user that's been delivered the impression interacts with the ad or goes to the website that you're looking to measure, that's how that attribution is measured. There's a lot of different things you can do with digital CTV attribution, applying those pixels to specific user actions on the website, applying it to the website in general so that you can measure users that have been delivered an impression that have then gone to the website. And then even further, you can kind of then measure whether or not those users are taking specific actions on the website. And these interactive ad units, I've definitely seen some success with QR codes, clickability, call to action type things that are included while your video creative runs. They do have a little bit more of a lift on the kind of creative production side. And there's a lot of different partners out there. Some work with all the publishers and they kind of provide that creative in just like your typical VAS tag. But then you talk about like a Brightline. They're only supported by certain publishers. So you definitely want to be careful picking your interactive ad unit partner, because you can run into some pretty big scale issues if you're working with a partner that is only supported by specific publishers.
Great. Bernie, anything additional there?
No, I think that's a good point, though, that with any of this, when we're talking about rich media, additional partners, you just want to vet those out because each one has highlights. They're better in certain areas.
Cool.
Yeah. Do your homework.
Yeah. As I think you should anywhere.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Awesome. Kind of shifting the gear here again, staying in the same mindset, but shoppable ads. Brian, are people actually buying through those shoppable ads, or is there still that large gap between like awareness type of campaigns and purchase type? Is it still too big of a gap?
I think the gap can be minimized if you have a good attribution partner
Managed,
and
yeah.
attribution study or attribution strategy. It's really difficult to tell, especially in the CTV space, whether or not your audience is interacting with and purchasing whatever you're looking to advertise if you don't have the proper attribution pixels kind of set up. It's a lot easier to do in clickable environments like mobile, desktop, tablet, that kind of thing, because you can measure that click-through rate.
Yeah.
But with CTV, it's a traditionally clickless environment. So working with a dependable and reliable attribution partner is really the way to kind of bridge that gap and see how frequently and how I guess meaningfully your audience is interacting with your creative.
Gotcha. Good point.
Yeah, and yeah, what I'm hearing from secondhand news is folks are kind of dipping their toe. They're using it as a piece of the strategy, just as like they would do with anything else. Maybe not putting everything forward all at once, trying it out, testing, see how it's working, see if it's given the results that they want. So I think it's let's test as we go along and then decide, look, and see what we do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But programmatic buying, just advertising in general, programmatic buying has evolved pretty significantly over the past 4-5 years now, especially in the last 3 or 4, with optimizations across the board. But a lot of people still find it pretty hard and pretty complex to kind of figure out and navigate. So one major factor contributing to this, I wanted to make sure to get this question out. I know we have about 10, 15 minutes left here, but one major factor that's factoring into the complexity of the programmatic space is some of the deals that are available for people. A lot of people get confused when comparing certain deals to others and which one's really the best bang for my buck. Am I actually serving in the correct areas with this deal? So when comparing, I would kind of love both your guys' insight. I'll direct this to whoever wants to take this one first. I'll let you take it. But when comparing PMP deals to real-time bidding, or even direct deals to PMP deals, just kind of comparing all the deals across the board. How do they stack up? What would you guys say from your side of things? What are the pros and cons to each approach or each kind of deal type? I know that's pretty wide open and pretty blasted out there. I'll direct it toward, I think I asked Brian the first one last. I'll direct that towards Bernie to start.
Yeah.
I know that's a huge question, but tell me what you're thinking.
I have a standing line. Like most people have a DSP rep. Not many people have an SSP person. So there's a major difference. And I think sometimes it gets lost in translation. Somebody like yourself is really leaning on SSP partners like us so you can customize or curate the inventory to make the most effective campaign possible. So when we talk about PMPs or what we might call deal IDs, we're talking about being able to put into a deal what you're looking for. Typically it's publishers, but also audience targeting can be added on that side. All things that then can be activated within a DSP. I think of it like the HOV carpool lane. You're going through the fast lane. You're staying out of the traffic. You're not allowing things to necessarily go through open market where fraud can take place and the waters are murkier. All these things, which I'm sure Brian will add on to. But it's like that's the beauty of using your supply side partners and curating these deals. And you'd be amazed at how creative you can get and the flexibility that you can have with them. But you add in then that there's efficiency. I have been with one of my agencies. They've shown me on the screen, your deals work better than just looking at stuff in open market or an off the shelf deal. Like she actually showed me that. So, this is what we do. We get passionate about it. I probably can go on and on, but I'll toss it to Brian, let him add. And then I know that this is a multiple question.
Yeah, it is. It's a little layered. I'll drill down. But yeah, Brian, it's interesting to see your side.
Yeah, definitely a great question. And it's part of the education process that Bernie goes through with his clients, that I go through with my clients and their programmatic buying teams. It's kind of like you're first getting started out in your DSP tool set. There's these off the shelf deals, open market inventory available. That's kind of where you get started. But then you run into issues with the things we kind of touched on earlier in the call, transparency into your inventory, gaps in reporting, really bad pricing and avails fluctuation. Those are kind of issues that you're going to run into in the open market.
Brian, not to cut you off, but that's a really good point, is that when you're in open market, there could be times where DSPs, their pipes open up and push through certain publishers that you would never otherwise know about that suddenly will mess up your bidding. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to add that in while you mentioned it. Sorry.
Exactly. And when you're buying in the open market, you're really buying kind of the entire ecosystem. And like Bernie says, certain publishers are going to send a bunch of supply at certain times. Other pubs aren't. The overwhelming majority of programmatic inventory is sold through curated deals and PMPs. The open market is really where the remnant and remaining inventory that these publishers are looking to monetize is being made available to buyers. So the kind of next stage in the evolution of a programmatic media buyer using a DSP tool set is to kind of cultivate a relationship with a reputable and trustworthy supply side partner, like a Magnite, like a Freewheel. We're the closest to the inventory you can get, and we can help you buy transparently and curate deals. And even if you put the same list of publishers head to head in open market deals versus a curated PMP that's scaled and prioritized from a partner that has direct relationships with those publishers, you're going to see better pricing, more scale, and better delivery against audiences that you're looking to reach through your buys.
Yeah, and I'll add, with all major SSPs at no additional cost to anybody. This doesn't come out. There's no fee that's associated with it other than a couple emails, no lift, and all of a sudden it gets pushed through to your DSP.
Yep.
Awesome. I want to ask another clarifying question just because I thought of it just now. But Bernie, I know you mentioned fraud in the real-time marketplace, real-time bidding. Can you guys both kind of expand just a little bit about what each of you are doing to eliminate fraud or to guarantee against fraud on your ends?
Yeah, I started the last one. Brian, you want to start with this one?
Yeah, absolutely. The overwhelming majority of fraud in the programmatic ecosystem comes from downstream aggregators that are repackaging and reselling inventory. They're not providing any real transparency into what you're buying. It's kind of like these generalized CTV packages or display packages. So one of the best ways to mitigate fraud in your buys is to work with partners like a Magnite, a Freewheel, who have direct relationships and direct technological pipes with those publishers. So there's no reselling. There's no indirect integrations occurring between the ad server, the SSP, and the DSP that's buying it. It is a direct path to the inventory you're buying, and that is the that is really the best way to mitigate any fraudulent activity in your programmatic buys.
Awesome.
Yeah, and speaking for Magnite, we take it very seriously. We not only do it for ourselves, but advocate for it within the industry. I saw a stat that showed once you take out salaries for our company, the next biggest expense is our fraud team, our IQ team. That's how seriously we take it. Industry standards are to have all your tags. We certainly do that. We have such a hard onboarding for any publisher to get there that something like only 2% possibly make it through. And once they're there, there's compliance. You have to keep on keeping up with it. I was going to the airport, jumped in an Uber the other day, and there was a cracked windshield. And I'm like, who checked this thing out? I'm sure it got checked at some point, but nobody's checking it along the way. Good SSPs will keep up with their compliance, have maybe a 1, 2, 3 strike policy at worst. And then once you're kicked off a platform, it is really hard to get back on. So publishers don't want to be kicked off. That's how seriously we're taking it.
Yeah, they really don't want that strikeout to be kicked off.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for drilling down on that. I appreciate that. I know that that's a common question. Fraud's always a big deal in the programmatic space, and we try to eliminate as much of that as we can. So I know we have about 5 minutes left. I just want to ask one last question, just a opinionated question for both of you. What's the biggest trend you think no one's talking about in programmatic, or just in advertising as a general whole? What would that one thing be that you guys could think of? I know it's kind of on the spot, but.
All right. I have kind of two. One's really quick.
Great.
We talked about metadata and being able to get granular with stuff. Some things that I'm reading in the trades right now are some people are working with some BI tools and some algorithms, trying to overlay some data and information to have insights into what would likely be airing. I don't think any of that is definitive. So I've started seeing a few articles on that, and we'll see. We'll see if that takes hold and if it makes sense. I don't know that it would be 100% and whether people are okay with that or not. The other thing that I'm seeing as a trend is the performance marketplace. So I'm getting asked a lot more questions about, hey, we work with a client that is really everything that they wants to be attributable to something. But by the way, we have our own thing going on. So do you have a performance marketplace that, if anybody was in traditional, might be more like a DR? I'm hearing more of that, where you may get lower CPMs, but your inventory, your placement may not be what it is if you're just buying regular. So that's not for everybody, but I am hearing that more and more as a trend. So yeah, I figured I would mention that.
As far as major trends in the programmatic space, I think Taylor, we've talked about this a bunch. Bernie, we've talked about this a bunch. But the real power of programmatic advertising is being able to reach your highly targeted audiences wherever they're consuming their media, across any content type, across any stream, across any device, wherever they're consuming that media. Being able to find that audience and target them effectively is one of the greatest strengths of programmatic advertising. And it's one of the, if not the biggest reason, all of the supply and impressions are moving over to the programmatic ecosystem. And the shift in the growth of meaningful audience targeting, addressability, some of the incredible publisher data, the retail media networks that are being made available from both ends. You're seeing buyers continue to learn and grow and evolve in their programmatic bidding and buying and audience targeting. And then on the flip side, on the sell side, you're seeing publishers and, again, retail media networks. You think like the Albertsons retail media network, Kroger retail media, Walmart, Amazon. They're all starting to make this really meaningful consumer purchase data and behavioral targeting available to the programmatic ecosystem. So more and more of that data is being made available and made targetable for buyers across the ecosystem. In 2020, or I guess 2023 versus 2024, audience targeting grew 39% year over year in the United States, with 57% rise in behavioral targeting and 43% rise in demo targeting. We're going to start to see that more and more. And I think, it's, again, touching on this kind of mad dash across the Wild West of programmatic advertising. This is one of the biggest points of education that I have with my buyers is, hey, it's not as important what content you're buying. It's your audience strategy that's really going to drive those meaningful results for your advertisers. And we want to hit your audience wherever they're consuming their media. It doesn't matter as much what they're watching. It matters who's watching.
Who and when and where. Yeah, exactly.
If I could just add to that,
Yeah.
like that is the overwhelming part of the conversation. But I also love that people are saying it's versatile. Like I can use programmatic. I can use CTV also for top of funnel just as easily as I can for the bottom of the funnel. So what we were doing on the traditional side, we can still bring that over and have different pieces of a campaign that are top, middle, and lower part of the funnel. So I think the versatility as well. Sometimes people just think about the specificity of it, but just as easily we can be brand awareness. That's the great thing.
Yeah. To add on to what you're saying, just real quick before we wrap up, about Amazon, Walmart, Albertsons providing some of that consumer level data. I think even Venmo and PayPal just recently announced that they're going to be making that available and even selling inventory on their sites and their apps. So I definitely agree with that being a trend and kind of being where we're moving going forward. It's kind of cool
which is hugely important data for advertisers.
Crazy important
access. Like these retail media networks and like Venmo, PayPal. I mean, these are purchase and transaction data partners. So we know what this audience is buying. We know what their history of what their purchase history looks like, and what potentially their propensity is to engage with your brand and your advertiser.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're just about at time here. I don't want to keep you guys too far over. I didn't notice any questions roll in through the live thing. I know it's set on private. I saw a few roll in, but we had already answered them through the private questions. But feel free, everybody who's listening or watching the recording of this, please reach out to Brian or Steve/Bernie. If you guys have any additional questions about anything on the supply side, any inventory, please reach out to them. I've used them I think I've known them both for, I think Bernie, maybe 2 or 3 years now. And Brian, I think we're going on like 5 since I started in programmatic. Both guys I trust, both companies I trust. But please feel free to reach out to them. Thank you all for listening. Huge thank you to you guys for jumping on. Really appreciate the time. I think we need a whole nother webinar in the future about the other ins and outs of programmatic, and we can spend time on everything. But we'll have to get something else together. But big thank you to you guys and everyone listening. Thanks so much. Hope you guys have a great one.
Enjoy the time.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.